An influx of Latin Americans, along with their culture, is changing almost every facet of American society. Here to tell us more about this transformation, what it means for the upcoming presidential election, and for us here in Canada, is Carlo Dade from the School of International Development and Global Studies at the University of Ottawa. Hello, nice to have you here in Toronto.
Oh, thanks for having me, Pia. Pleasure to meet you.
Okay, so before we get going, I want to throw some stats up. Let's take a look at some numbers on the U.S. Latino community. Makes up about 11% of all adult U.S. citizens, projected to make up about 8.9% of voters on Election Day. They're also projected to make up about 8% of voters in toss-up states. Now, the projected Latino voter participation rate expected to be around 52.7% back in 2008 during the last presidential election, 49.9%. Now, and according to polling, 67% of Latino Americans are expected to support Barack Obama. Okay, Carlo, I've been calling them Latinos, Latin Americans. What's the proper terminology before we go on any further?
Well, if you would ask individuals in the Hispanic, Latin American community in the United States, the term would be Colombian American, Mexican American. But in terms of the usage of the term, either Latino or Hispanic is okay.
Let's stick with Latino. Okay. So given all those statistics, how important is the Latino American votes and voters to the outcome of the election?
It will be crucial, but again, when saying it's important for the election in the United States, in the presidential election, you have to specify state by state. So the overall numbers and looking at national numbers in the United States is relatively a fruitless exercise. But looking at it state by state, in certain key states, it will be absolutely crucial. Florida, where close to 20% of the electorate identifies itself as Hispanic. Even places like Arizona, Nevada, where the percentages are over 15%. In these states, it will be crucial. And what's been interesting is that we've really missed this phenomenon. We've missed the importance. Most polling in the U.S. is done in English only. And what we've seen is that polling that's done in English and Spanish. Someone picks up the phone and says, hola, you ask the questions in Spanish. If they say hello, you ask the questions in English. What we're seeing is that those numbers are different than the polls people will be familiar with in the audience.
Okay, so the polls, I guess we're talking about English polls, suggest that about 70% of Latinos would vote for Barack Obama. You're saying that's not accurate?
It's higher in some states. Some of the key swing states, New Mexico, we're expecting higher numbers. Arizona won't be a surprise this election in terms of higher numbers. In other states, it's a bit lower. In Virginia, I think it's in the low 70s, maybe even high 60s. Florida is another state that's completely different. And that's because of the split between Cuban Americans and non-Cuban Hispanic, non-Cuban Latinos. And the numbers in Florida are much lower.
Tell me this, if that's true, if those numbers are so different when you ask questions in Spanish, why don't more polling companies do this?
It's something that's only recently dawning on people. As Hispanics or Latinos become more important, people are beginning to discover factors like this. If Latinos were a smaller percentage of the population, if their impact was felt to be less significant, why bother? But as the numbers get bigger and people begin to discover that the impact is more significant, you begin to discover the importance of things like this. Last election, 2010 in Nevada, Harry Reid, the leader of the Senate, all the polls had him down by 3 points. He wound up winning by 5 points, 8-point swing. The only polling company that got it right was Latino Decisions because they polled in both languages. They saw it coming. Same thing in Florida in the primaries. Latino Decisions again got it right with the number of Latinos voting for Romney as opposed to Gingrich and others because they're polling in 2 languages.
All right, let's talk about what's been going on during this campaign. The media pundits, everyone's sort of been, parsing over how Mitt Romney and Barack Obama have done in the debates. We were talking about English language debates, but they also did a Spanish language appearance when broadcaster Univision asked, and they both chose to appear to sit down and do a televised town hall. In that element, how did they both perform? How did Barack Obama and Mitt Romney perform?
Well, what was interesting was that Romney actually did better than I think I expected and a lot of people expected him to do. I think he did better than Barack Obama. Stepping back, though, the interesting thing about the debate, though, was Univision demanded this debate. On some nights in the U.S., Univision is the most watched network in the United States, and that's because of cultural preference more than language. But they were highly upset that there were no moderators of color chosen for this debate. African Americans were upset, Hispanics were upset. Hispanics were able to demand their own debate, the candidates appear on different nights, first the president and then Romney, or first Romney, then the president. But when Romney got away from the Tea Party, and he got away from those elements of the Republican Party in a debate in a format where maybe the Tea Party wouldn't be listening, or not everything would get translated out of the debate, not everything would make its way to mainstream media, he performed very differently than you've seen him in almost every other format.
How so?
He was freer to talk about issues such as immigration, education. It was a much more moderate and considerate appearance than when he has to appeal to the more radical or extreme elements of the Republican Party.
Curious, what did he say about immigration? Because the Republicans have been so slammed by Arizona's anti-immigration law. How did he appeal to Latino voters on that front?
Well, he said, Obama really hasn't done anything. Are you really that much better off with Obama in terms of immigration? And Latinos are split on the immigration issue. It's fascinatingly complex. There are a sizable number of, a significant number, I won't say sizable, say significant number of Latinos that poll in favor of measures like the one in Arizona, SB 1070, one of the harshest identity check laws, searching for documents around. But the issue of immigration is framed in two ways. One, Latinos who are in the United States and have been there for generations, people who were in the United States before there was a United States, are also concerned about losing their jobs to immigrants, and they're worried about the economic viability of their families. But what happens when the Republicans take this issue, they start by saying, we're worried about our jobs, we're worried about protecting our jobs. And a lot of Latinos will say, yeah, we are worried about protecting our jobs. And then the Republicans, the Tea Party elements and those affiliated with them will say, yeah, and it's those people that are stealing our jobs. And Hispanics say, well, wait a minute, what do you mean those people? Yeah, those people are stealing our jobs, they're increasing crime. And the Republicans run with it from there in ways that distance themselves from Latinos and the ways that really antagonize Latinos.
All right, so we were talking about the polls being, different and maybe a little bit accurate when trying to capture how Latinos will vote. But it is fair to say that the majorities are expected to vote for Barack Obama.
Yes.
So let's move forward. In the near future, how easy or difficult do you think it's going to be for the Republican Party to make major gains to try and court this vote?
It's shaping up to be difficult, but not impossible. If you look back at George Bush, when he first came into office, he really stood a good chance of strengthening Republicans with Latinos. He was going to bring about immigration reform. He was going to be the education president. Two issues of major importance to Latinos, derailed by September the 11th, and that agenda never took off. And after September 11th, you saw a rise of nativism, xenophobia in the United States. It was suddenly okay to talk about groups in disparaging ways again. And the Tea Party and other groups in the Republican Party have seized upon that. As the Republican Party depends more upon these groups for its base, it's confined and consigned itself increasingly to the margins. They're going to have to break away from groups that use language like those people when they talk about immigration. And until they can do that, they're going to be in a world of trouble.
And it's very important because I just want to bring up a graphic just to show how demographically the Latino population has changed as a voting force in the U.S. So let's take a look at this. Back in 1980, the Latinos in the United States made up just about 8% of the population. Take a look at this. At 2010, we're hitting about 17% of the population. It's a huge voting, I don't want to say block, but it's a huge community. Where does this go from here? I mean, is this community soaring? Is it growing incrementally? Where do we go?
Oh, no, the rates of growth are continuing for decades out. But it was originally thought, well, not originally, but recently it was thought that by 2050, the U.S. would be 1/3 Hispanic, 32%, 33%. Those projections are now at 2042 for the U.S. to become 1/3 Hispanic. By 2042, Latinos, Hispanics will also double. They'll lap African Americans. Twice as many.
It's now the largest minority group already in the United States.
They're larger than African Americans by several percentage points. The interesting thing is African Americans vote in higher percentages than do Latinos. So even though there are more Latinos, there are more African American voters. But at the rates of growth for the population, even though rates of people registering and voting is less, just the overall surge in numbers means that Latinos will pass African Americans as a percentage of the electorate, and increasing power and influence that will go with that.
You know what's interesting? We wouldn't be having this conversation talking about Latinos and their voting power I don't know, 8 years ago in Canada. Definitely, probably, well, I will say definitely, probably not 15 years ago. I want to read something that was written in the Toronto Star recently. This is by Tim Harper, and it's called "Do We Even Know Our Neighbors Anymore?" Here's what he said. With the most fundamental demographic shift of our lifetimes unfolding before their eyes, successive Canadian governments have blissfully continued traditional relations on traditional matters based on a United States that no longer exists. Carlo, many Canadians, have this image in this mind, this picture of the United States. It's pretty traditional. How much has that picture been changed by the growth of the Latino population?
It's been changed, obviously, in terms of numbers, obviously in terms of culture and political influence. It's moved the locus of political power from the Northeast to the Southeast. But it's also changed the U.S. in ways that we're just beginning to understand in Canada. For example, we had a shared history with the United States. Common history, culture, we would link to similar events. When Barack Obama became president of the United States, it's something that we understood. We've been with the United States on its racial trajectory with African Americans. We had loyalists come across up into New Brunswick. So we understand this. We may not understand it perfectly or treat it well, but we understand this. But with Latinos, this is a change that's occurring amongst a group with whom we have no historical connections. We have no cultural connections.
No shared language. Well, not no shared language, but I mean a lot of their first language is Spanish.
And it's changing it in other ways too. For instance, in New York, it used to be that New York politicians would come to Canada to vacation. But nowadays, if you look, the Clintons, when they were in the Senate, when Hillary Clinton was in the Senate, their beach house, their summer place was in the Dominican Republic. Charlie Rangel, head of the House Ways and Means Committee, one of the most prominent African-American politicians in the States. His beach house is in the Dominican Republic. Bloomberg, he vacations in the DR. It's not for the sun and the beach, though it's nice there. They're going down there for votes and photo ops that they can bring back to share with the Dominican population of New York. It's crucial for races. So we're losing that connection with the United States. And you see it amongst younger politicians, too. All the counties that ring Washington, D.C., Anne Arundel, Prince George, Fairfax, Arlington, the heads of the counties are going down to El Salvador to vote, not to look for votes and photo ops. So at the senior levels of U.S. political establishment and the up and coming, we're losing that connection. People are going to the South first. So you have a president like Obama who winds up in the White House with no real appreciation for Canada. And this will be the trend in the future.
Canadians traditionally, I shouldn't say, we all assume that the big Latino population are in those southern states, Arizona, Florida, Texas, places like that. It's changing though. It's happening in the Northeast, border states with Canada. Has that not helped our understanding sort of move on?
I don't know. I don't think so. The numbers in the northern states, the majority of states along our border with the U.S., Latinos are the minority population. The exception would be Michigan and Montana, Idaho, and Alaska, where indigenous populations are larger. It really hasn't factored. These groups are still a small percentage of the population, so 2%, 1%, 3%, but the numbers are growing. So we may not see the impact now, but at the rates of growth, 70% increase a year, 110% a year, we're going to start seeing it sometime soon.
Okay, we just have about 3 minutes left. I want to get through a couple more things. When we talk about Canada-U.S. issues, one of the big ones is the Keystone XL pipeline. With the increased presence of American Latinos, is there any effect on how Canada should approach this issue?
Wow, great question. A poll came out of Colorado, Hispanics in Colorado, asking how they felt about oil shale development, major issue in Colorado right now. And Latinos polled showing significantly greater concern over the issue of oil shale development, its impact on the environment, on water and air, than did whites and then did African Americans. This corresponds with polling done by the Sierra Club in California and the Los Angeles Times, each one showing significantly greater concern for the environment and environmental issues, and a propensity to vote according to environmental concerns amongst Latinos. So if I'm the guys at Keystone XL, go to your map and pull it out and take a look at Latino communities along the pipeline route. You've got an issue there.
Okay, you've been trying to get officials in Ottawa to pay more attention to the demographic shift and the issues that might be impacted. So what do you think Canada should be doing?
I think first and foremost, paying attention. cannot say with certainty, I don't think anyone can say with certainty that this will impact the Canada-U.S. relationship. However, it's such a momentous change in the U.S., affecting all aspects of the United States, economics, politics, and we are so heavily involved, intertwined with the U.S., that you can't ignore this sort of issue. There may be problems, but there may also be opportunities in the future. So we really, given our relationship with the United States, of all countries around the globe, we need to be out in front of this issue.
Do you think Ottawa gets it?
I don't know. These days, it's impossible to tell what Ottawa gets and what Ottawa doesn't. I know in the past, they worked on the issue. They had a group in Foreign Affairs that was looking at it. They unfortunately didn't have the money or the resources to do the type of research that was necessary, and it's since died off. But yeah, knowing what people in Ottawa are thinking these days is difficult, and I'm in Ottawa.
Fair enough. Carlo, thank you very much.
My pleasure.
Support Ontario's public television. Donate at tvo.org.